The wind howled through the endless white of the forest, slicing through the night like 1,000 icy knives. Snowflakes danced in the beam of a lonely lantern that hung outside a small wooden cabin, its dim light flickering in the blizzard. Inside that fragile shelter lived Elena Grace, a 21-year-old girl whose life had been a long conversation with loneliness. She was beautiful, but not the kind of beauty you find on magazine covers. Hers was quiet, unpolished, fragile. She wore a hand-knitted sweater, her mother's last gift before sickness took her away 2 winters ago. Her father had followed soon after, leaving her with nothing but this old cabin and a fading hope that life could someday be more than just survival. Each morning, Elena walked miles through the snow to the nearby town of Maple Hollow, where she worked double shifts at a small diner. She never complained. She saved every dollar, not for luxuries, but for dreams, maybe one day to study nursing, maybe to move somewhere warm, maybe just to feel safe again. That night, though, as the storm grew angrier, Elena sensed something different in the air. The forest had a strange silence, the kind that comes before something unexpected. She was stacking the last pieces of firewood near the door when she heard it, faint at first, then clearer. "Help, please." She froze. The voice came from beyond the snow-covered trees. Fear pricked her chest. Out here, no one called for help unless something was very wrong. She grabbed her lantern, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and stepped out into the storm. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling. "Is someone there?" Through the haze of falling snow, she saw movement, a dark figure stumbling forward, clutching something in his arms. Her heart raced. As he came closer, she saw it wasn't just a man, he was carrying a small boy, barely 6 or 7, whose face was pale and motionless. The man's lips were blue, his eyes wide with desperation. "Please, my son, he's sick, our car broke down, please." Elena didn't hesitate. "Come inside. Quickly." She pulled the door open and guided them in. The men staggered to the chair by the fire, lowering the boy gently onto the rug. Snow melted off his coat, dripping onto the wooden floor. Elena rushed to her small stove, poured water into a kettle, and threw extra logs into the fire. "He needs warmth," she said, kneeling beside the child. "What happened to him?" "Fever," the men whispered, shivering. "We've been walking for hours. I didn't think we'd make it." She touched the boy's forehead, burning hot. "We need to get him warm fast." She wrapped him in a blanket and placed a damp cloth on his head. "What's his name?" "Oliver," the man said, his voice cracking. "My name's Daniel." "Elena," she replied softly. "Don't worry, Daniel. He'll be all right." He looked at her with disbelief. Her confidence, her calmness, it was like a light cutting through the storm. As the fire crackled, Elena handed him a mug of tea. His hands trembled as he took it. "You didn't even ask who I am," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "You're a father who needed help. That's all that matters tonight." Daniel stared into the flames. No one had said something that kind to him in years. Most people he met only saw what he owned, not who he was. But Elena looked at him like a human being, not a stranger or a threat. For a long while, they sat in silence. The wind screamed outside, but inside, the fire painted the room in gold. Elena checked on Oliver again. His fever was starting to break. She sighed in relief. "You're lucky," she said softly. "A few more hours in that storm, Anne." "I know," Daniel whispered, voice heavy with guilt. "It's my fault. I thought I could drive through before it got worse. I didn't even check the forecast." "Hey," she said, looking at him gently. "You did what any father would do. You tried." Those words pierced him. Daniel wasn't used to forgiveness, especially not from a stranger. He glanced around the cabin. It was small but warm, filled with simple things, handmade blankets, old books, a few framed photos of a smiling couple and a little girl. "Your parents?" he asked. Elena nodded, a faint sadness in her eyes. "Yeah. They built this place. After they passed, I stayed. It's quiet here, sometimes too quiet." Daniel studied her face, the quiet strength, the loneliness hidden behind her smile. "You're alone here?" She shrugged. "I guess so. But it's home." For a moment, neither spoke. The firelight flickered across their faces, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding of pain, of resilience, of the strange way fate brings lost souls together. Later, when Oliver stirred and muttered softly in his sleep, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. Elena covered the boy with another blanket, then sat across from Daniel, sipping her tea. "You must think I'm crazy," he said with a tired smile. She shook her head. "No. Just human." That word, human, felt heavier than gold. He wanted to tell her everything, that he wasn't just an ordinary traveler, that his name, Daniel Hartwell, was known across the world, attached to a billion-dollar empire. But tonight, none of that mattered. He was just a father, saved by a girl who had nothing yet gave everything. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to help us." "I couldn't just watch someone freeze outside my door," she replied simply. "Besides, maybe one day I'll need help too." Daniel smiled, but inside, something shifted, a seed of gratitude, humility, and something else he hadn't felt in years, hope. Outside, the storm roared like a living beast, but inside that small cabin, warmth and quiet lingered. The boy slept peacefully, and the man who had spent his life in glass towers and luxury hotels found comfort in a stranger's kindness. As the hours passed, Elena dozed off in the chair, her head resting near the firelight. Daniel watched her, the way her hair caught the light, the gentle rise and fall of her breath. She was pure, untouched by greed or judgment. He realized something he had long forgotten: real wealth wasn't measured in numbers but in moments like this, when someone gives without expecting anything in return. Before he too drifted into sleep, he whispered to himself, "One day, I'll repay her. Not because I have to, but because I want to." Outside, the snow began to calm. The storm had finally passed, and with it, the storm inside his heart began to fade too.